Glock recently gutted half their catalog. Whole calibers disappeared without warning. Gen 4s, Gen 5s, MOS slides, scrubbed clean from distributor sheets like they never existed. One moment you had a buffet of 357 SIGs and 45 gaps. The next, they were ghosts. And this wasn't a quiet little inventory shuffle. The scale was massive. The Glock 22 alone lost more submodels than some brands have in their entire handgun lineup. So what gives? Is this just Glock cleaning house? Or are we watching the final prep before Gen 6 hits the production line? In this video, we'll talk about the vanishing SKUs, the patents that popped up right behind them, and the changes that might finally pull Glock into the modular, optics-ready future everyone else is chasing. From takedown systems that don't need a trigger press to frame swaps that could actually work on a duty gun, we're piecing together the most compelling case yet that Gen 6 is real and nearly here. If you thought Gen 5 was the last of Glock's evolution, you haven't seen what's brewing behind those Austrian factory doors. This goes beyond serration tweaks and slide cuts. Something big is coming. Let's crack it wide open. Glock fans thought they'd seen every possible SKU permutation until early spring, when a leaked distributor email exploded across pistol forums and social media. Line after line of part numbers filled the screen, over 100 individual models, Gen 4s, Gen 5s, even optics-ready MOS guns, now flagged for the chopping block. The 357 SIG trio? Gone? The 45 Gap family? History. You could feel the collective double-take. Why would Glock trim a catalog that already looked lean compared to the rainbow of SKUs many competitors churn out? Discontinuations aren't new, yet the scale here felt different. The Glock 22 alone allegedly lost 14 variants, more than some companies have in their whole lineup. Browsing Glock's own website confirmed at least part of the rumor mill. The rarer calibers had quietly vanished, and discontinued banners sat where add to cart used to live. Something bigger than routine inventory control was clearly brewing. That revelation kicked off the most animated Glock barstool chatter since the Gen 5 barrels ditched polygonal rifling. Some shrugged, figuring demand for 40 caliber service pistols and niche gap rounds had hit its natural low. Others pointed to standardization pressures. Militaries and law enforcement agencies worldwide now want 9mm across the board, and civilian shooters follow suit because training ammo stays cheap and plentiful. Still, the scale of the purge didn't add up unless a fresh production wave was queued behind the curtains. Glock's manufacturing philosophy rarely lets idle machines sit, so if half the catalog was being mothballed, that floor space had to be earmarked for the next generation. Gen 6 talk, once a speculative hobby, suddenly sounded plausible, and that drove everyone to hunt for hard evidence. Real clues showed up where many product rumors go to die: the patent office. A stack of filings from Glock Technology GmbH between 2020 and 2025 sketches out more than routine maintenance tweaks. One grant, dated February 4, 2025, number 122159944, describes a drop-in trigger unit designed to nestle inside a standardized trigger pocket. Another from April 1, 2025, number 122648888, redraws the safety selector and locking lever geometry so the pistol can be field stripped without squeezing the trigger. Scroll further and you'll see fresh design patents for an upper receiver and a lower receiver, each sporting contours we've never handled in a factory Glock. None of those documents mentions Gen 6 in black ink. That term exists only in fan shorthand. But when you overlay the legal drawings on existing frames, tolerances shift just enough to hint at a new architecture. The no-trigger pull takedown is the headliner because it strikes at one of Glock's longest-standing criticisms. For decades, every certified armorer's course drilled the same mantra: check clear, pull the trigger, then pinch the slide release tabs. That routine led to negligent discharges when complacent owners skipped step 1. The new patent replaces the forced decock with a locking lever that decouples the striker without relying on the trigger shoe. To the average range rat, it means less drama during cleaning. To a procurement officer writing specs for a police academy, it removes a training liability and makes the pistol easier to approve. California's roster, which assesses models partly on drop safety procedures, could also look more kindly on a Glock that strips like a SIG or an HK. Forum replies swung from applause to eye-rolling. One veteran shooter typed that anyone unable to check an empty chamber probably shouldn't own a gun, while another welcomed anything that slices negligent discharge stats. I lean pragmatic. If a mechanical redesign achieves the same reliability while lowering the margin for human error, there's no downside. Glock already validated the principle in its German market Glock 46, a rotating barrel variant that never required a trigger press. Importing that concept to a conventional tilting barrel lockup is an engineering lift, yet the patent text shows Glock's team solved it by adding a spring-biased locking lever behind the trigger axis. The lever interrupts trigger bar travel during disassembly, freeing the slide only when the striker is blocked. Dry-fire purists can still press the trigger for function tests. Armorers gain a safer cleaning routine. Everyone wins. The second hot feature lives in what fans dub the half-grip module. Unlike a SIG P320's serialized fire control unit, Glock's patent envisions a monolithic upper frame, trigger assembly included, mated to swappable grip shells that attach below the trigger guard. Think of it as trimming the lower half of a Gen 5 frame, then clipping on a shorter or longer magazine well. This sidesteps the regulatory puzzle of relocating the serial number, because the true receiver never leaves the pistol. A shooter could run a full-size duty grip at the range, swap to a compact shell for concealed carry, and keep the exact same trigger feel. If the concept hits production, Glock may sell grip packs the way it sells backstraps today, bundled with spring-loaded locking pins. Patents never guarantee retail execution, but the part's geometry in document D1031899 lines up eerily well with forum sketches of that detachable lower. Some old schoolers are less than thrilled. A mid-frame seam sounds like a weak point if tolerances drift or pins loosen after tens of thousands of rounds. One machinist on Glock Talk argued that any load-bearing interface sitting midway down the magazine well will eventually wiggle itself free under recoil. He could be right if Glock relies on basic plastic bosses, yet the patent describes tongue-and-groove rails reinforced by metal inserts. That hints at a borrow from the carbine world, where upper-lower receiver fit must stay tight for accuracy. Until we handle a physical sample, durability debates will remain pure theory. Personally, I'm curious rather than worried. Glock has resisted finger groove comebacks and cut-rate MIM parts for decades. If the company finally embraces modularity, it will likely over-engineer the latching system. Optics mounting generates almost as much coffee shop controversy as trigger weight. Gen 4 MOS slides were a Band-Aid plate system that made red dots possible, but sat high and required screws to stay put. Springfield's Echelon and Ruger's RXM moved the goalposts with multi-footprint. Direct mount slides. Glock's answer appears to be what Aimpoint calls the COA, an A-cut milled footprint debuted on limited Gen 5 runs. The forum Grapevine claims a 1-year Aimpoint exclusivity, after which other manufacturers can license the cut. Critics groan about yet another proprietary pattern, but the COA cut uses twin recoil bosses and a centered cross slot, so adapter plates could still bridge to Holosun or Trijicon footprints. Patents don't list optic names. Yet the upper receiver design patent granted February 2024 shows a rectangular window flanked by locating posts exactly where the COA mount sits on test mule slides. That timing dovetails with the rumored discontinuation of MOS-only SKUs, suggesting Glock will bake the A-cut into most Gen 6 slides instead of offering plate kits. While modular grips and optics cuts hog headlines, the drop-in trigger unit might be the sleeper upgrade. Patent 1221594 describes a self-contained trigger housing that slides into a receiver pocket, secures with a pin, and brings along its own leaf spring. Glock's original trigger bar design has always been easy to tune, but swapping a full housing could let competition shooters install a 3-pound hybrid without filing anything. It also hints that Glock plans premium trims, think performance models, where the factory installs an adjustable aluminum shoe and curved trigger bar, then charges accordingly. For those dreaming of a factory GPT arm in large-frame pistols, this patent is the first real breadcrumb. Of course, none of these changes exist in a vacuum. The market now teems with SAR-9s, Taurus GX4s, and a parade of Turkish and Brazilian clones that hit shelves for half the price of a Gen 5. Clones survive because Glock's core SKUs evolve slowly, allowing competitors to mimic the Gen 3, patent-expired architecture and undercut on cost, if, and it is still if until an official press release drops, Glock jumps to a more complex modular frame with new tooling. MSRP will climb. A friend at a large FFL laughed at wishlist posts begging for lower prices once Glock drops the loader and brush. He's already predicting a $20 bump just to cover the updated slide machining and new optic cover plates. But price is relative. If Gen 6 slides give you direct mount aimpoint ruggedness, and the frame lets you switch from a Glock 17 length grip to a Glock 19 length in 60 seconds, many buyers will consider the premium justified. The timing of a reveal matters almost as much as the features. SHOT Show drowns announcements in a sea of polymer. The NRA annual meetings, on the other hand, offer a concentrated audience of gun-focused media with fewer toy launches diluting the headlines. Canny manufacturers sometimes hold back their big splash until the broader press cycle quiets down, much like Sony sidestepping E3 with its own PlayStation event. Sources claiming Glock will unveil Gen 6 at the NRA meetings aren't crazy. In late spring, handgun nerds crave fresh news, and a Gen 6 announcement would dominate podcasts and Instagram feeds for weeks instead of hours. If the patents we just walked through tie to a real product line, Glock's marketing department will want maximum daylight to explain why this is more than another front serration facelift. Now, to the practical question tormenting every Range Buddy text thread. Do you dump your Gen 5s while resale is still hot, or ride them until Gen 6 sits in stores? With discontinued models already trickling down in price, I see opportunity on both ends. Collectors who love oddball calibers are snatching 45 gaps at pawnshop rates, because they know support will vanish. Meanwhile, budget-minded Glock newcomers are gobbling up police trade G22s because 40 caliber ball ammo is inexpensive again. If Gen 6 truly offers a safer takedown and future-proof optics, hobbyists chasing the latest gadget will sell lightly used Gen 5 19s for sub-$400, repeating the cycle seen when Gen 5 elbowed Gen 4 off shelves. My advice: keep any Glock that already fills a defined role, but line up cash for at least one Gen 6 purchase so you can decide with hands-on experience rather than forum hearsay. Glock's own development cadence offers a final clue. Gen 4 launched in 2010. Gen 5 hit consumers in 2017. That 7-year rhythm points right at 2024 to 2025 for the next leap. Patents filed between 2020 and 2022 would have reached production prototype stage by now, and the logistics window lines up with a launch this season. If for some reason the new family slips another year, expect a partial release. Perhaps the COA slide cut rolls across existing frames first, followed by the modular lower in a staggered SKU release. Either way, the train has left the station. Warehouses aren't clearing 100 SKUs just for fun. Before I hand this conversation over to the outro, let's boil the speculation into a workable plan of action. If you're happy with iron sights, a standard grip, and cleaning rituals you learned a decade ago, keep rocking your current Glock. It will keep running long after fancy optics produce their first dead battery. If, however, you crave direct mount red dots, an easier field strip that removes a training liability, and the idea of one serialized core that can morph from duty to CCW length, earmark funds now, because early adopter demand will spike prices just like the MOS rollout did. I'm personally budgeting for one of the first 9mm Gen 6s off the line, not because my Gen 5 is lacking, but because I want to see whether Glock finally balanced simplicity and flexibility in a way only they can. The patents suggest they've taken that balance seriously. The discontinuation list says they're ready to commit production capacity. All that's left is the official unveiling, and judging by the chatter, that moment is fast approaching. So now you've seen the signs, vanished SKUs, confirmed patents, and a market waiting for Glock's next move. Gen 6 isn't official yet, but every clue points to a major shift in how Glocks are built, bought, and carried. Would you ditch your Gen 5 for a modular lower? Does a no-trigger pull takedown solve a real problem or fix what isn't broken? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve before Glock makes it official, hit like, share, subscribe, and click the bell icon. The Gen 6 era may be closer than you think.